Hi everybody, welcome back to Checkmate the Matrix, and today we have a very special guest, someone I've been wanting to speak to for a while, which is Paul Webster. If you've actually seen any of his videos, he puts it out as the Webby Report, or hopefully he's going to start doing a bit more, and we're going to go over what we see as a remedy, okay, so a correct and a real remedy, which we do see sort of like other things being spoken of. And Paul, for a long time, has been telling people, well, look, there's an actual real remedy here, and it works. And we know it works because he's always talking to British Gas about it. So I don't want to tell you too much about it. So let's get cracking then, Paul. And how are you doing today?
I'm doing okay today, mate. I take a day, each day as it comes these days, Paul. But today's not bad.
You have to though, don't you? Because it's
certainly do.
Insane world at the best of times, and
certainly do. My town and local areas were all warned yesterday that there was going to be riots, but shops were boarded up early and everything. Nothing happened. So they're whipping stuff up, pal.
Of course, yeah. That was the same here, right? They spread all the word around, sort of like Newcastle and all the surrounding areas in Newcastle. All of the shops were closing. So one of our gyms is in a part of Newcastle, and just outside of the actual main city. And they said, look, the police come, you best close down. There is a lot of other Asian shops around the place like that, other shops. So we teach kids, and you don't want the kids to be in there, if there was anything kicking off. So we did actually follow advice and close down, which is a shame, but nothing happened. And I think a lot of it is just like even the actual authorities, that they're just as bad as everyone else and causing trouble anyway.
I think it's another IQ test. I think that's all it is another IQ test. I mean, the major one was the COVID stuff. I as a 52-year-old man, I was brought up being told to use my common sense. Use your common, what you're born with. Well, when I used my common sense and I looked at where this stuff was coming from, it was far too obvious. But people who I equally yoked with me saying that they've got common sense had completely gone off the wall. Some people I've known 35 years, somebody walked too close to them, they were throwing themselves into a bush to get away. It was absolutely ridiculous, mate. And all I saw was, well, they've done a good test here. They've had some results that they can work with. It's, I ran out of conspiracy theories quite a few years back.
Refresh them all. Refresh them. Started a whole brand new lot.
Just conspiracies. They're not theories. They're conspiracies. You only need two people to conspire against someone else for a conspiracy. You can't look at this stuff and say there's not one or two that's conspiring against a lot of people. It'd be very, very naive if that's what you thought. I'd say you don't know what world you're living in, because I certainly didn't when I started out on this path, and back in 2010.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the thing that we want to actually let's go back to that then, 2010, and talk about what actually happened and how did rather than just spitting out sort of what's gone on and how you actually do things. What started it, and how did you actually get involved in whatever you got involved in at the beginning?
Right. Well, after an 11.5-year relationship, me and my ex, we knew we'd come to an impasse. We didn't get on for a long time. We tried to make it work. We got together under circumstances that weren't right anyway. But I'd tried to make the best of stuff. When she decided that wasn't enough, and she wanted to move out, I said, "Well, look, I'm happy with that. I'll help you move. I'll help you decorate," which I did. I took debts on that she couldn't pay, so I could just keep going. Problem that we had was coming into 2010. My ex's son had been helping himself to a few quid out of her bank account when he was drawing for her. So it put her in the red. Quite simply now, I could have dealt with that. Knowing what I know now, I could have dealt with that had she come to me, but she didn't. On my daughter's 16th birthday, I get a phone call saying she wants 500 quid off me And I said, you know, I've got nothing like that. I work hand to mouth. And she just went, you'll have to sell your house, and put the phone down. So that made me hit the law books and find out, where do I stand with this? Because 50% is my house, according to the deeds. And because it was my inheritance, I'd put her on the mortgage when I remortgaged. So she had half of the property. And I thought, well, according to this, as long as I just say, well, whoever she sells it to, I'll negotiate with, but I'm not selling mine. Thought, this is too easy, it's too simple. And the first court case was that simple. The judge said, well, could you just sign that? I said, no, I'm not signing anything. I don't want your service. You know, B&Q's manager doesn't come running out of his shop, grab hold of me, drag me in and make me buy a hammer and some nails. Because if I want their service, I'll go in and buy a hammer and some nails. But this court system isn't built like that. But the first judge went, oh, there's nothing I can do. 2 weeks later, I get another summons, and it's a bigger courtroom, different judge. And this judge tells me that they're going to sell my property. They're going to sell the house and then split it. And I went, where do you get authority over me and my property? And this was like in the foyer, because I was talking to the court clerk, and I said, can you ask him that? And I sat down in the foyer. 4 minutes later, the double doors burst open at Wigan Magistrates Court, and 6 armed police run past me and my friend, and they run in and out of every courtroom in there like Scooby-Doo. And then they stood in the middle, scratching their head, wondering, what's going on here? And the court clerk calls them over then. And when they call them over, I look over to my mate and I just mouth to him, I go, for me. And then Mr. Webster was summoned into a courtroom with 2 armed police in front of him, 2 behind him, and 1 either side of him for the sale of a house. And I'd only asked, where do you get your authority? And I thought, there's something really strange here. It does something to you, because at the time, I'm a serving prison officer. 2 days before, I'm handcuffed to an armed robber, a bank robber, at Warrington General, who's having treatment. There's no police involved or anything. Yet I'm in a county court for the sale of a house. Armed police are called. It's not even in the papers. It's not on the news and nothing. And taxpayers have paid for those armed police to come. Over the next 5 hearings, over 30 coppers, video evidence gatherers. I'm going down to the court. There's 2 police passenger vehicles outside, police inside, police on the landings, police in the courtroom, video evidence gatherers. I'd asked one question, Peter. Where'd you get your authority? And I couldn't understand how they were doing this, because I was reading the law, and their rules and regulations was for me. You can't do this unless it's. I thought, how are you doing this? I needed to find this bit out. In that meantime, British Gas had messed up 3 payment plans, and I just went. I couldn't go with anybody else at the time. And I just said, do you know what? Send me a paper bill, because I was paying £60 direct debit. It got reduced to £5 without telling me. And I thought, oh, they're managing my account, because naively, even though I wasn't sure of it, I thought they work for me, because I'm not a debtor, I'm a creditor. This is what I was learning. So they're working for me, they're balancing my account. They don't want me to be in too much credit. So they've reduced it, they're balancing it. I thought that's what an agent would do. You know, it made kind of sense at the time. But then you get a £454 bill saying, you owe us this. And when I speak to him, he said, yeah, we've made the mistake. Because I said, you've reduced it and not told me. No, we've made a mistake, but it still needs paying. And then I set up another payment plan. And I get a letter saying that I've not made a payment. And I'm looking at the 2 receipts where I've gone to the shop every 2 weeks and paid. So it was 60 quid a month. And she went, can you send us a copy? And did it. And I went, do you know what? I've had enough. Send me a paper bill. And they always sent me a proper bill. And you can tell it's a proper bill because it's got a joint Giro check attached to it. Any other bill for me, Pete, I'd look at it as an invoice to a shop. Everything else is, if it's a bank Giro, brilliant. But if it doesn't say trans cash on it, that's not a joint Giro. You can't sign it. You can't put stamps on it. You can't colour pictures in and change it into something else. It's a specific instrument. It's a negotiable instrument under the Bills of Exchange. So a bank giro with no trans cash is a paying in slip. If you get just a paying in slip, you're being treated as a debtor shopkeeper. It was that simple to me. I had to make it simple because I'm an ex-taxi driver, ex-window cleaner with 7 GCSEs. I need it simple. I can understand language. I love English language, but I need it to be simple so I'm not off in any tangents. Because if there's one thing that I learned in the courts was, if you give them access to the long grass, they're going to drag you into that long grass and they'll wait till you either burn out mentally, run out of money, or give up. That's what they want. So I really did not want to go into a courtroom with an argument. So I always look for the remedies. And if you keep it simple, you can't help but find these remedies. So my mate, bless him, who'd already been involved with an agent, he'd been to court, he'd done this, and he was explaining it to me. And he said, look, do you not understand this with trans cash on it? He says, it's like me saying, Webby, you owe me 20 quid. There's a check, sign it and I can get paid. But I'm not paying him. It's coming from a third party. It's a joint. Well, where's the third party? Well, whoever it is has paid it into the commercial account, which is the Santander Commercial Bank. So the way I understood it was the taxpayers' money had been paid into that account for my gas usage, so it's my share. If I sign and date that and it's set off, that would mean that they can balance the books for my part, because they took me tax, I've worked the job, they took me tax, they give me the gas, they give me the water, they give me electric. It's not like you're working 10 minutes, well, you can have 5 minutes of gas. It's not it wouldn't be conducive to a good society. So because we're a debt-based society, creditors are given these benefits. The trouble is, after 2 world wars, Pete, and then an education system that is more than two-tiered, but if you go to Eton, you're taught the Bills of Exchange Act by the age of 13. If you go to Lee High School like I did, you're not. But one history teacher in 1980, something like that, we did a history lesson, and he said, this is what we're going to discuss today. And we put the date at the top right, and then we had to write the title and underline it and put our pens down and discuss what was being the subject on the board. And I wrote Bills of Exchange Act 1882, underlined it, put my pen down and went, never going to use this. It's a waste of my bloody time. 10-year-old, 8-year-old, and I'm saying this is a waste of my time. And as soon as my mate mentioned Bills of Exchange and promise to pay, I went, oh, that makes sense. That I've heard this somewhere before. And when I understood that I'm being sent a check by somebody who's saying, you owe us this money, and then you see the Bills of Exchange in the Consumer Credit Act that says, for this instrument, you sign and date it and return it to the agent. That's it. No magic, no nothing. People have got mixed up with why I put stamps on the first document. It was to pay the stamp duty on the document, because when you put documents into court, they're not yours anymore unless they've been paid for. So I wanted to do this all proper. British Gas, with the warrants agent, turns up at the magistrate's court, and the warrants agent stands in the dock and says, for 5-10 minutes, Mr. Webster owes us money, 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 money. We're there for a forced entry warrant, yet he's talking about money I owe him. So when I get into the dock, I said, all I've heard is that I owe this money, so there's a claim being made against me, but I've settled the bill. However, if this is for a forced entry warrant, I can also tell you that I've invited British Gas to come and do like for like and replace whatever it needs doing, but I don't want to pay-as-you-go meter. Anything like for like, make sure the safety, there's no health and safety issues, but I don't want a meter change. And they ignored that. I said, so to the magistrate, says, which is it? Are we here for a warrant, or are we here for the bills? Because I've settled it. And I'll never forget, because you've got the magistrates up here, and then you've got the legal clerk just below them in the middle. And the magistrate puts her glasses on the end of her nose, Peter, and looks over at me in the dock and says, "Bills of exchange?" And before I could say anything, the legal clerk looks up at her and says, "Yes, ma'am, that's a legal remedy we don't deal with in this jurisdiction." So
what, sorry?
It's a legal remedy we don't deal with in this jurisdiction, because he was sticking with the warrant. I'm not going into that. He's just told the magistrate, Mr. Webster's brought a cure for that. We're not going to talk about that. We'll stick with the warrant. And all he said was, "Can we adjourn it before a district judge?" So in 2 weeks, I went, "Of course you can." I went before a district judge. A man in a boiler suit, obviously not legally trained, turns up with a letter that I had 3 months previous through the post that talked about debt avoidance techniques being gleaned from the internet. This is basic bloody commerce, Pete. You know, this is like if you're a treasurer of a football team and you buy 5 new balls and you don't put a receipt in, you can't balance the books. It was like, I'm not this, you know, I'm going through all this process, Peter. I'm going, I'm not this clever, but this is stupidity what I'm getting back here. They're not listening. They're not looking at their own laws. I knew there was something massively wrong. You know, you could just feel my entire life being pulled apart with this. And then you're telling your family and friends that the gas is free, because you think when you say something so flippant, people go, "You dickhead. Why would you say that? That's not what I got, Pete. Their gas bills went up because I weren't paying, or I was refusing, or I was doing this, I was doing that." So I was all kinds of names, but none of them could tell me I was wrong. Now, my mum taught me to work hard and pay my bills. I'm working out that that's acting as a debtor in a debt-based economy. And I went, so what if I don't act as a debtor, which was signing the Giro, because they sent me the correct one, but then they didn't want to implement it. So I had to go to, like I said, Staines, Middlesex, bringing Centrica, who were telling me that you know, they're scoffing at me at first, and then when I ring back because they've had to go away to speak to legal, they're all nice again. They're nice because that Giro is remedy. It's not an argument. It's not a what if. It's what it's designed for. I don't want to talk about anything. I've got people who say, "I have no contract." It's nothing to do with contracts. I've seen judges ask utility companies, "This man says he's no contract with you." They've gone, "Yep, we agree. We've no contract with him." It's about revenue collection at that point from business. And I couldn't work out how they were applying all this and getting away with it, because it made too much sense. So I ended up going to land registry, and I spoke to a woman there. You can't get face-to-face apparently at land registry with legally trained people now. And I said, "Look," I said, "you've took my property. I'm giving it to somebody else. You've changed the deeds, and I've not signed anything." And she said, "We only need a county court stamp." And I went, "Hang on." I said, "When I buy a house, I sign a contract, it's witnessed. They sign a contract, it's witnessed. We exchange contracts, title deeds are changed." And I said, "You're saying you don't need signatures?" She says, "No, we only need a county court stamp." And I said, "I can go to a stationery shop this afternoon and have a county court stamp made up. Are you going to help me steal people's property?" And she said, "It doesn't work like that." And I said, "You're a paper clearing warehouse for the banks and judiciary to steal property, aren't you?" And she looked me right in the face, Peter, and she went, "I can neither confirm nor deny that." You know, and that to me, to understand that it didn't matter that I had remedies for these things. It didn't matter that I was saying the truth. All you could see was, you're in a fight now, because gas, water and electric being paid 3 times over by people, because you get off your arse and work, that work is taxed, so you've paid for it twice there, then they're sending you a bill and saying pay again. Well, it's only the shopkeepers who use that gas, water and electric to make profit who should pay. Debtors pay. I'm acting as a debtor. Why am I acting as a debtor? Because I was told that I become Mr. Paul Webster. Well, Mr., Miss, Mrs., how I understood it, are business titles. Businesses can't own property. So when Mr. Webster registered a property, it went straight into commercial jurisdiction. Because council tax only applies to commercial property, now council tax applies to my property, all on presumption. And if you don't rebut that presumption, it stands. So when people say this is an illegal tax, it's not. It's a commercial tax. It's meant to help the taxpayer. It's just been applied improperly and nobody knows about it. And you can't say, well, I didn't know, it's your fault, because ignorance of the law is no excuse. But what we found is when we were going into these courts, knowing what we knew, you saw the corruption, you saw the fraud, because they can't let you have it. They can't let you say, they can't let you say such and such, and oh yes, you're right, Mr. Webster. You know, people wanted things like court orders saying your gas is free. You've got to be off your bloody head, Pete, if you think that you're going to go into a courtroom and get that when this cash cow has been going on for decades. And all I could sit there was and go, my mum taught me this. That meant my mum, who ran businesses, who was a clever woman, didn't see this, didn't understand this. And that for me was one of the biggest things, because like I said, I wasn't academic at school, always had questions, but weren't interested in school. I couldn't wait to get out of school. But all those common sense questions couldn't get answered. And the only rebuttal was I was a dickhead, or I was called names. And that was why from 2015, I went around the country. I did conference talks. I did international radio shows. First radio show I went on was Vinnie Eastwood. And it was the Vinnie Eastwood radio show then. So I went on the show, thought it went really well. He was the first one who gave me a platform to talk about it. And I goes into work and we're all taking the piss out of me. I said, what are you laughing at? You dickhead. You're on YouTube. I went, I was on a radio show. He went, well, it was on video, mate. He said, I saw you in your Family Guy pajamas scratching your balls. I went, oh, that's not a good look. So it was like a massive learning process, and you're walking into the courts, Pete, at the same time as you're learning. And because you've learned something that they've never had to deal with, they're learning at the same time. So we saw the courts. You know, I saw a comment that you made that I did a court case for somebody and we had a warrant took out in the corridor. I've never done cases for anybody else other than the people who I work with and myself. That was one of our cases that we had several warrants just ripped out by saying we're going to put you on the stand and cross-examine you about this. They couldn't have it. So they were just withdrawing them left, right and centre. Me and my friend got to a Mexican standoff. That was it. Nobody wants to process that Giro, Peter. Why? Because it just obliterates everything. If you knew that your gas, water and electric signing and dating a piece of paper and giving them back made that go away, and council tax is not applicable, just those things tells you that when you look at your wages, you shouldn't be, well, I've got to take that out for gas, that out for electric, that out for water, that out for council tax, because it should all be there. And that, once upon a time, I mean, look at now, it's a mortgage for a lot of people. Gas, water and electric and council tax is another mortgage. And it's going to get worse. Keir Starmer says it's going to go up 77%. When I wanted people to help 10 years ago, nobody was interested, Pete, because they could afford to pay. Now they put the prices up, they want that quick fix. And it's not there. You're going to have to get your hands dirty. You're going to have to go into these courts with the remedy. Or if you can't get the remedy, you've got to go in the courts and sue them for the remedy, because I don't see any other way around it. Like I said, I always got issued the correct one. I don't think I would do now. They don't talk to me that this is where it's got to. I'm more than happy to go to court with what I've got in my bundle. That's where I've set it off as. That's where we'd all set it off as. Because fighting for my house, I'd already done a credit card and overdraft, and that wasn't just getting rid of. That was saying, I'll pay you what I owe you lawfully, but as it's a credit agreement, I've got to be involved in this as a creditor somewhere. So you're only facilitating a credit agreement between me and me. and I'm paying interest on that, which is an insurance policy. So when you pay your mortgage, if they hold the deed and the note, they've got to have the indemnity insurance in case you fail to pay, because there might not be a house to sell. So as trustees to that agreement, they'd be liable if there isn't an insurance policy. When these banks say, we've not got an insurance policy, I would say 99% I'm sure that the note has been sold, which means there is no mortgage. And because they've not got the both, they can't claim payments. But everybody's going off in different directions, Pete. We're not concentrating on what the actual simple facts are. You know, we've got a lot of Pied Pipers as well. You know, I've been involved in cases where somebody would have lost their house. For, you know, you're talking £200,000 of equity, and they didn't want to pay council tax because it funds terrorism. So if you go and stand in a courtroom and say that, don't mention my name, because they'll just make an example out of you, because it doesn't even touch on what it is. It's a commercial property tax. What they do with it is completely different. We've employed these people to give them that autonomy to do with our money what they want. That's why once they lie to you and they get 4 years, they don't care what you think now, because you've given us permission, you've given us consent. Until we learn how to take that consent, and protesting isn't that. Rob Menard, years ago, he was a Canadian lad who was doing a lot of work on this stuff, said protest is legal acceptance. You have the right to organise a protest and wave your flags and say, I don't want this. There you go, you've had your protest. Guess what's happening? It's the same when you tell your kids they're going to bed. You have the right to say, no, I'm not, but they always end up in bed. And that's the same with the legal process. You've got politicians who can tell lies legally, so they're the perfect mouthpieces for the judiciary, for the banks, and then all the underlings of the companies that you've got. You know, you've got the big gas electric companies that people use, and they steal a certain amount of equity because you pay. They don't tell you that you shouldn't pay, you should set off. When you get down to Octopus and all them, they're saying, well, we can beat that rate because we only steal a little bit less equity. It's still stealing of equity, and it still goes in the same pot. You know, I've been a prison officer. You see a lot of these things. I had a lad in who was in for tax evasion, never been in jail, trouble before in his life. But he said, we all do it, Webby. He says, but the big boys above me didn't get paid, so they cut the rope on my level, and he says we all ended up doing sentences. So he got 12 months, he was out in 6. He got 6 months, he was out in 3. Because he was an educated lad, we put him straight onto the cleaners. He was doing apps and everything because he was articulate. And I said, you're a commercial lawyer. He says, yeah. I said, so you know negotiable instruments? He says, yeah, of course I do. I said, so a joint Giro check attached to my gas bill requires endorsing, sending back and setting off. And he sat down on his bed in an 8x10 cell and said, 25 years I've done this job and I've never looked at it like that. And you just think, how? Because somebody who didn't care, like me, I didn't care. I was paying all my bills. I didn't care about that. I just thought that was life. Well, all of a sudden, that's life is now not life. It's, you know, it's where'd you go with it? Because as far as I was concerned, all I could see was I'm going into a courtroom, armed police are being used against me. They're telling me that they're going to sell me a house. They're telling me that they can do this, and nobody's listening to me. In my court case, I put case law before my judge. Now, if case law applies to the case, Pete, as you know, it must be applied if it's applicable. Well, my judge turned the case law upside down, put a hand on it and said, I can't see that. I take the bank's word that you owe them money. And that case law was created by Anthony Carlin against Santander in High Court in Ireland, where the judge said, look, you're a very big building society, but you've got to prove, show me where you've got the money from to lend this man. You've got to prove it. They can't do that because that's not provable. So my court case brought out mortgage fraud, brought out council tax fraud, brought out utilities fraud. all because of the way they acted. And all I could see was the way I'm taught to act was allowing them to get away with it. And it was only when I said, hang on, that was when the trouble started. So from day one, when I went into that court and I was told I had remedy, I didn't need anything else. I didn't need anything else. It was the factor is that people wanted me to go and do it. Me go and get this court order that says you don't pay gas. Me do it. Nah, I'm doing enough. Here's all the information. Can't tell you how many people I've sat with, Pete, and gone through all this stuff until they've got it. You know, it's hours and hours and hours. And I'm not one of these who, you know, I understand some people who charge money are doing it as a living, but everybody's in this together. For me, I've got some really good information. There you go. What do you mean you don't want to use it? Well, don't use it then. Well, will you do it for me? I've been offered thousands of pounds, Peter. No. This turned my life upside down. Everything I've ever been sure about got rocked. There's not one subject that we could ever talk about, Peter, that I won't have questions of, that you can just say, that's fact. Well, water's wet. Well, it depends on what state it's in, doesn't it? It could be ice, it could be steam. You know, we get into all kinds of debates. And that's how pedantic I became with the English language, because my mum always taught me that if I used a word and I didn't understand it, I could get myself in a lot of trouble. And I used a word once I was in a shop with my mum. It was my mum's shop. I was talking to my mates and the shop was full. And I called my mate a hypocrite because I heard a cool word and I thought it sounded cool. And I used it. And the shop, my mum's not shut the shop, but she stopped everybody in silence by going, "What does that mean?" Well, I didn't know. She went, "Get out my sight." Because she said, I knew this was here. So I went straight to a dictionary. And as she walked in from the front of the shop after she'd finished serving, I'm reading the dictionary, Peter, and she's going, "Well, yes, it doesn't fit there." She went, "How many times, Paul? You use words that you don't understand, you'll get yourself in trouble." So I went full on into all these words. As soon as that court clerk said I'd got a remedy, there was no point in talking about anything else. I've got a cure. Why won't you accept it? There's something nefarious about the reason why you won't accept it. Because it would be as simple as how we'd used to do it. It was go to the post office, the postmaster would tear it off, stamp the Giro, put it in the till, and stamp the bill. That's you done. That was you setting off. But most people with that Giro, like my nan would do, my nan would go to the electric board with this £200 cheque that she'd signed and then put £200 cash to it. So they were getting done. They got done for double dipping in the mid-90s. Straight after the mid-90s, 96, 97, it's direct debit will knock you a tenner off your bill. So you don't see this bill. But I always was billed, and they always played the correct game. They didn't want to be classed as in fraud, because if they're pretending I'm a shopkeeper, not sending me the right one, and I question it, they're in a lot of trouble. So they always sent it. It was when we started to challenge it. We got to 2017, Peter, and that was when the courts changed, because they virtually just went, apply for your warrants, utility companies, you've got them. Anybody questions, they'll have to come to us and we'll tell them where to go. They circled the wagons in 27p. That's why I knew 21, 22, when they were going to put the prices up, people are going to be looking for this. And Santander said, we won't issue them anymore. Well, that means that you're going to have to go into a corrupt court system as a claimant and sue them for that remedy. Nobody wants to do that because they've got kids, they've got this, they've got that. I understand it. But if nobody does it, then we just sleepwalk into cattle cars like we've done in the past. It was that black and white to me, Pete, and that's why I lost a lot of friends and family. You get to 2017, everything materially is gone. Just a few very close friends. Some I might not have been sat here without them. You know, they've dragged me through some shit and picked me back up on my feet and dusted me off and pushed me on my way. Without that, and without the job, the job, you know, people pull the face at being a prison officer. Best job I ever had, mate. The lads are no, and most of the lads are no different to lads I grew up with in a cat sea. So as long as you're straight and you're honest, it was an easy job. It was such an easy job. I loved it. But because I'm going to fleet back a little bit now, because from 1988, I lost my dad in a road accident in 1988. So death had always been a part of me questioning as a kid, even like almost autistic. So I'd always ask about what happens after this life. Well, I'd had experiences after my dad went that there was something. I knew there was something after this life, but I also knew that religion wasn't the answer, because going to listen to what a man says, what God says, doesn't feel right. I don't really know what God is saying, if he's even bothering speaking to me. And after sitting through 15 years of left foot and right foot of services, the Catholics service takes 10 minutes longer because they have a bit of a wafer and a bit of a drink. Same hymns, same sermon. So there was nothing. I've looked at Islam, and when you see there's a lot of Christian attributes in Islam, but then you get to the parts where, hey, no, that doesn't look right. And there's a lot of Muslims that don't practice that, but it's in the Quran. I'm going, I'm not interested in that. So I couldn't find any religions. So I ended up doing mediumship, New Age stuff and all that. And I was good at mediumship. I was asked to go around spiritualist churches because I'd give messages and people would take them, Pete. And I don't know where these are coming from. I never heard spirit. I never saw spirit. I would clear my mind. I would get images in my head and I would feel what that meant. And I would give an interpretation, and people enjoyed that. And I enjoyed it because I thought, well, maybe this is the path, because I couldn't find anything else. But as I studying theology all along, there was one real unique message that stood out of every religion. And whatever, I mean, there's 700 religions that follow Jesus. None of them agree. They all have different things about it, right? So one morning, bearing in mind, I've lost everything. I'm drinking heavily, self-medicating because medication didn't agree with me at all. And one morning, a voice woke me up and said, "It is done." That's when I just went, that was Jesus, which made me sit up. Because if you'd have seen my living room, Pete, all you could see was legal documents everywhere. You couldn't be further away from spiritual if you tried. Nothing. And I just went, why would I say that? I went to jail and I did an 11-hour shift, and I'm thinking, I don't know what to do with this. But because I'd learned all the lies of this world, and I'm getting the truth now from this world, maybe I'm going to get some truth from the Bible. Because all I could think at this point was that conspiracy theory in the Bible, I've never read. I've heard things, but I went and read the bills of exchange. People would tell me it was wrong, but I know it's right. So I thought, how can I have an opinion that's valid if I've not read it? And I thought, maybe I'll debunk it, maybe it'll be the same, whatever. So I went to read it, and instead of Revelation telling me something out of the Bible, it switched on to me, because I walked out on my wife, my daughter, a house bought and paid for, because I thought the grass was greener on the other side of the fence. But when I got to the other side of the fence, I started to go to B&Q, I started to mow the bastard. There was nothing that was greener. But I made my choice, I made my mistake. So all I could see was mentally I'd done that. But at this point, it was here. It was in my heart that it hit me. And I ended up on the phone to my ex-wife, who, thank God that she's still one of my best friends. And I cried to her for 2 hours over us splitting up. And she forgave me because she said we were only kids. I got married at 20, thinking, we'd make a life. Because when I lost my dad at 16, I just wanted that security. But that all changed. And I can't tell you where that changed, because I know what I did, but I don't recognise the thought patterns of that idiot back 30 years ago. So I get to this point, and all I could see was the unique message in the Bible from the gospel is that before the law of Moses, there was no sin, because nobody knew they were doing anything wrong. All of a sudden, God took some people, gave them these laws and said, you're going to be the beacon for everybody else. But they couldn't live the law because no man can live that law. So Jesus lived that law. All you got to do is believe that and you're sorted because there's nothing you can do. And I'm sat there, Peter, going, oh, brilliant. Just believe then. How do you do that? I know I can see this statement's very unique because this man says, I'm the only way, the truth, the life. And all these other liars say that's wrong. All the Catholics, the Protestants, the Islams, Buddhists, that's wrong. We all go to the same place. I have a friend who's a teacher. She teaches religious education. The Catholics go to heaven on a bike. The Protestants go in a car. For some reason, she always puts the Muslims on an aeroplane. But we all go to the same place. That's how she delivers it to children. And I'm going, well, that's not true according to this, that is regarded as the best word of God, whatever you want to look at it. I thought that's really interesting. But I didn't want to believe until I did. And then all of the Bible made all of the sense with all of the lines. And you can't just turn up at somebody's barbecue and explain all that. So I don't get invited to barbecues and parties anymore. I mean, to be fair, I had more people accepting that I'd become a born-again Christian, Peter, than when I told them the gas were free. That was a real shining out moment for the, you know, oh, you'll accept that, but not that your gas is free. It was like it was too pummeled into them. And I don't know why I just never accepted it. I just understood it from when my mate said, you know what a promissory note is? Yeah, I promise to pay for something. And that promise is used with other promises for them. And I walk out with my purchase. I get my Mars bar, my promise is done. I said, well, that's what the economy runs like. But to balance the books, you've got to set them off. You've got to say, yes, thank you, I've used that payment. Well, instead, nobody's using the payment that's put, and they're paying instead. So this money's, where's it going? I envisage it's going into a side fund, which is kept like a bit like lost property to the railway station. It's kept there for 3 months and then somebody can claim it. Nobody's claimed it. They can't just siphon it off and steal it because some dickhead like me or you, Pete, might come and say, well, hang on, I shouldn't be paying, you know. So we've got ourselves now where anybody who wants to engage with this stuff, you've got to get your hands dirty. There's nobody going to be able to do this for you. You've got to do it yourself. There's remedy. How much do you want to fight for remedy? If your child's in trouble, you're going to do anything. Well, you're teaching your child to be enslaved again. You know, this world we live in, Peter, is the biggest amount of slavery that's ever been in this world. And people think they're free. That is the biggest mind construct that they've ever been able to give us. The cage door's open, but we don't know what to do about it. Instead, we stand philosophizing about the cage door being open, philosophizing about what they're doing wrong, and even building them up to being, look at how clever are these people. From your birth, Peter, if you were taught that you drive to work in your toilet and you have a crap in your car, and we know that we do the opposite, but you believe that, then you're going to look silly. Well, what if the mass majority have been given the same poor information and only a few? You know, we go back to the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. One-eyed man sees things none of you do. You've got to rely on me. There's going to be an eclipse. Unless you kill your firstborn, he won't come back. Oh, there's the eclipse. You better kill him quick. Oh, yeah, he said he's coming back now. Just knowledge. So if you can't be, you know, I had to find a lot of humility because, you know, you build up a lot of arrogance with things that you think you know about. And the humility that will humble you, it'll take you to the floor, mate. And, you know, took me to the floor. And that's why it felt so strong that I needed to inform people. But people were interested. But I always said, as soon as that knock on the door comes, that's when people are interested. And that's what's happened. It's just, I don't know how long you've been at this game, Pete, but 10 years ago, people were doing the same thing that people are doing now, turning up in commercial courts saying, I'm a man. Yeah, we agree you're a man. I have no contract. Yeah, we agree you've no contract. Are you going to pay this bill? There's no other argument. You've just used two things that don't make any sense because your property's classed as commercial. It's a shop. These people must collect revenue from you, and you're not telling them it's not a shop, and you don't know how to do that. And at the end of the day, we registered that as at least a possible commercial property. So how they're applying the council tax is, even if you stand there and say it's not a shop, they can say, well, because you reside there, it could be a shop, because you can reside at a bed and breakfast, not have a rental house and not have a mortgage. You can reside at bed and breakfast while you're paying a commercial property for that. So they class that as commercial if you use the word reside. If you don't rebut that, that stands. And you've got judges who now can sit in council tax court cases, that's not a court, we know, but can make arbitrary decisions. And you have to start a process again, hopefully get a different judge, and then that judge go against another judge's decision. And in my experience, that doesn't really happen very often.
No. Just one quick question. Let's go back to what you mentioned there before, when you were saying, like, you know, in the mid-90s, that was it British Gas that you had said was actually got done for double dipping? They were like shown to be double dipping.
They got fined for it. You can't find it on the internet or anything anymore. I've not gone through the time machine bit, but I clearly remember the BBC commented on it that British Gas had been fined for double dipping, but BBC, nobody really cares. They just have a talking point. Oh, do you see that? British Gas got fined, having a bit of a dip. Oh, the naughty. I'll still keep paying my bills, because they don't understand that bit of it. Well, that was a bit of a wake-up call, because they've been going away with that for so long. Somebody found that they were double dipping. So because they found they were double dipping, they've had to change it. Once they've got fined, they've had to change the mechanism. They did it with the poll tax. They tried to impose a poll tax on every adult in the property. Well, that wasn't, they couldn't justify it. They couldn't even justify that in law. So what did they do? They scrapped it and put it under a different name, called it council tax, and then just stuck it back on the property. Because everybody had always paid rates, but they don't understand what rates they were paying. They were paying business rates. Council tax, poll tax, was a different introduction. It's so that the shop that you pay business rates on, well, the shed at the back or the flat above, you could have storage for your business in that flat. So council tax applies, drops down from business rates. So they're applying council tax inappropriately if people can prove that they're not a shopkeeper. But because of how we've been taught to act, Pete, we can't get away from the fact that they're doing nothing wrong legally because of how we've acted. It gives them that get out. And the only way you can stop that is by getting numbers together to go into a court. You know, I don't mean as in a class action, because if the first one loses it, they've all gone. But an action where everybody's using the same facts, remedy. If you've got a remedy, everybody should be using it. That Giro, Pete, it was remedy. It cured my gas bill. It cured my electric. It cured my water. And it cures your credit cards. Marks and Spencer's issue joint Giro credits. We've seen them work. Temporary debit 279, credit 279, temporary. And then they're contacting us saying, oh, you need to get in touch with your bank. You've not quite done this right. We're giving it you for now, meaning, oh, bloody hell, we processed this. We'll have to try and make up a story. And that is what the catching out was. All I knew was there was remedy with this, and there's arguments that will give remedy if they're used. But we've got so many people, these Pied Pipers, going into courtrooms saying, do this, give me your money, I'll do this, and we'll do that. And then they're losing property left, right, and centre. They're losing equity, and the people who are doing it just disappear. And you can't be one of them. You can't be one of them and be true. If you want to make money off people's misery, then you're part of the problem. In my opinion.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if we wanted to actually, I know obviously with the poll tax thing, and then they've obviously changed it to like call it council tax. They're still charging, the same thing. They're still actually trying to make everybody pay. Now,
as if you've got at least 4 adults in your house, you're still paying the same as if you were on poll tax.
Yeah, because I mean, I've got a friend of mine, and he actually runs a lot of HMOs, which is homes with multiple occupancy. Just in case anyone doesn't know that, so they convert like a normal home, change the lounge or the dining room, they change it into just a bedroom, and then they put like a group of adults in that share the home. They share facilities like the bathrooms, toilets, kitchens, but they have their own bedroom. Now, they've always just paid the same council tax, right? Up until now, it's getting changed. And now, like, say it is a 6-room HMO, they're now going to pay like 6 council taxes on there. So I think someone's just went and clicked and thought, oh, do you know what? We're going to actually hurt them even more now, because people are moving away from trying to be a buy-to-let, landlord, going into actually, well, I'm going to do an HMO instead. So then I can change it all and put loads of people in and make more money. They've seen that and thought, nah, stopping that. So let's do it by the council tax. And like, you're going to stop people having a decent business, but you're also just going to make more rip-off money for yourself. So, but how can we actually then, how can we like kind of explain it to sort of like get, because now, right, you got massive groups, right, that are saying like, well, we'll ask for our, what is it called it? Where's their obligation? We're going to challenge them for obligation. And they're using, to me, they've always used the wrong thing. They've said, oh, well, it tells you on the, what is it called? The Bill of Rights. You don't have to pay council tax. I'm thinking, no, it doesn't. And I've read the Bill of Rights a lot, and I can't find it whatsoever on there. But
nothing to do with man's rights at all, council tax. It's a business. Simple.
So, but I mean, how do you, because now, I mean, and you say something against, like anybody at all, and it's like massive arguments, and everybody hates each other. It's just like, everyone well, you've obviously got a lot of it yourself. People like calling you names, and, you just think, oh, I can't be bothered. Don't want to speak to anybody anymore, But I mean, how can you actually get people to realize then? So look, all you have to do is A, B, and C. But they always want to run off and try and find it. I don't know, like reinvent the wheel, maybe, or
yeah. That's what I mean. Peter. I've seen people with utility bills sat in court pushing a birth certificate forward on the desk and then sitting there and not speaking. And the judge has gone, Mr. Smith, are you here? Mr. Smith. Right, well, Mr. Smith hasn't turned up, so we'll just adjudicate in his absence. That's a £900 fine. He sat there, he said nothing. So then you get the other ones who say, don't even bother going to their courts. You get the others that say, you're not Mr. Paul Webster. That's the dead name. That's this. That's my monopoly piece to engage in commerce in a debt-based economy as a creditor. I shouldn't be scared of Mr. Paul Webster. What they should be scared of is you're making a claim against this. So you have to show that I've done something to corroborate what your claim is, which they can't, especially when you've got a remedy off them. There's nowhere for them to go. So I didn't want to argue about anything else other than the check. And then what you had people, whether it was on purpose or not, who was just getting an ordinary bank Giro attached to the invoice, and then they were trying to endorse it and then saying, see, it doesn't work. It doesn't work because if it hasn't got trans cash logo, there's nothing in transit. It needs funds attaching. It's paying insulin. I can't tell people that in any simpler terms. When you tried that your gas is free because it's taken out of your taxes, and I don't know personally anybody who checks what their wages were before tax and then try and implement the bills on course. The tax has gone, they look at what's gone into the bank account. Then they say, well, we need this for gas, water, electric, council tax. That shouldn't be in the equation. It's already gone. So how can you tell people any simpler, Pete? You know, it's like it just can't penetrate. I have to be wrong. And I understand it, because when I thought I must be wrong here, I actually gave it to my best mate. He's like a brother. I've known him 46 years, and I'm 52. And I just went, I know you'll tell me if I'm barking up the wrong tree here. Just take it away and let me know. Just be honest. And he came back and he went, I can't see how you're wrong. He says, it looks right to me. So that's when we tentatively started with the courts, and we saw what the courts did. You know, 60-odd-year-old men shuffling paperwork saying, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. It's a big insight to what you're actually doing and what you're actually asking. And that was on the back of armed police being called on me and never understanding why. The court manager, after 2 letters, never contacted me to tell me why I had police presence. I had to go through the police crimes commissioner to get an interview with a constable, who interviewed me for an hour and a quarter and agreed that this was criminal. But after 10 minutes with the detective sergeant, it was civil. So you're in the wrong business, mate. If you're a solicitor or a judge, you can steal property and the police will help you. But as far as I was concerned, any stolen property is reported to the police and they'll help you. But no, that's not true anymore. There's no such thing as that. That's why we've got police who don't understand the law turning up and carrying stage 4 cancer sufferers out of the house, evicting them on behalf of bailiffs. You know, the world needs to be changed and needs to be stopped. But it's where you're pushing us. Because if I've got remedy and I can't come into your court and get that remedy, then where do you put people? It looks like they're baiting people into some kind of civil, I wouldn't say civil law just yet, but certainly into civil unrest. And then the legislation will be passed to control that civil unrest. Keir Starmer's already saying that the way forward is facial recognition. Well, you get the digital ID in, you're done. We're done. It's just, I don't know if or whether this can be stopped, Pete. You know, things have got to get bad. People can still go to Chippy and buy chips and go to the pub and stuff like that. While that's still going on and football's on and the Olympics are on, nobody can see anything happening. But it's when you're fighting people off at your doorstep because they want your last tin of beans.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's, you know, nobody seems to actually react at all until it's gone to such a position that it's uncomfortable for them. That's really what it is, isn't it? You know, they'll accept everything that happens and it's all fine. Just like lockdown. You know, and it was, I don't think they could have took it much longer because more and more people were just getting annoyed and they weren't going to do it. And if they'd have pushed it further, then you would have went into complete reversal of the situation. But then they just, it's like they regurgitate everything, don't they? So this is just going to be another set of it. So they're putting everybody against each other. It's all a great big argument, a fight and all of that. And like you said, well, I'll tell you what, digital ID and lockdowns, and then nobody's getting out without your digital ID, and then that's it. It was settled. It's settled now.
Well,
that would be, because you're the ones that smashed everything up.
And that would be when the digital ID is accepted. That will be when the banking collapse happens, and that would mean the negotiable instruments, joint gyros, bills of exchange, gone.
Yeah.
So there's no remedy for that. What do they leave you with? What if it's left to pitchforks and torches, and we haven't got any matches for our torches, and we haven't got any pitchforks because we've given everything up? And I just see how we've given everything up. And you've got college students now, 18-year-olds, saying that socialism is the future. We've done this, we've tried it, we know where it ends. You've got to be naive or in on it or stupid. You can't be in any of the category if you think that socialism, which always ends up as full-on communism, works when we've seen what it actually does. You know, we had a world war to see what socialism and communism does together. They fight each other, but they agree on so much as well because there's a dictatorship, there's a tyranny. Well, if you get digital ID and you can walk down the street, Peter, and you're walking through whatever town you live in, you're waiting to cross a road and a billboard lights up with your face on it saying, bad citizen, not a good creditor. That's what happens in China. You drop below 500 credits, you're not getting a plane ticket, train ticket, bus ticket. You know, you're getting nothing. And we're going to accept that. Well, I would have said that would have been too much. But the last 4 years have proved me wrong on that. They're willing to accept. They're willing to accept anything. And, you know, I with my family, I had to stand at the end of the driveway, leaning on my car, whilst talking to my family who stood on the doorstep because I wasn't allowed in the house because I wouldn't wear a mask and I wouldn't get vaccinated.
Yeah.
And now all that's changed. Now all that's changed, Pete, because they understand that they shouldn't have got vaccinated. They understand there's something gone on. But, you know, when you're told you're not going to do this.
With it being like an IQ test, you know, so the ones that have sort of like failed their IQ test have all got vaccinated, you know, tried running around with masks on all the time. Well, actually, funnily, it's not funny. Just went down to the shop there just before, and there's still people now, right, wearing masks. You know, so there is a few people still doing it. It's saying that, and I bet you know, not being funny, but how many of those people that are all getting arrested for smashing up their own towns and everything, how many of them have went and got all that done? You know, absolute craziness.
Well, that's what gets me about
all the jelly juice.
That's what gets me about the riot in Her Hills in Leeds. The only arrest that was made was a 50-odd-year-old white woman who went out to speak to coppers and offer them ice pops, believe it or not. But because there was a contingent of balaclavaed, hooded up Asian lads who came up and started going all gobbly, they told her to go away, the coppers, and she said, I couldn't just walk away because I'd have had to just cross the street and go into my house and all these people would see where I lived. So they arrested her. And yet you've got a fella who's live on video setting fire to a bus, and he had to try it a few times. You know, it wasn't like, oh, it just went woof up. He was continually trying to light the seats in this bus, and you think, hasn't he been arrested yet? Oh, this is two-tier policing. We're going back to the grooming gang situation where, well, we won't say anything about them because that's ridiculous. And then when people come out, and this isn't just white people, Pete, I know people. There's people from all colours, creeds and religions saying, you can't do this is wrong. But they don't care because they'll whip up enough useful idiots. Those people who are still, yesterday, a fella in his car on his own had a mask on. And he let me go, and all I could do was just stare at him as I drove past him. Because I thought, what do you do? You're in a car on your own. What are you saving yourself from? I couldn't get it. I couldn't get my head around it, that it's still going on.
Yeah, that fresh air will get you. But like I said, I passed a couple of people today, you know, and just popping in the shop quickly, and you know, they got masks on, and they're lost forever now. You know, if it's gone past the point, you know, that where that you actually had the hassle to do it, right? And if you were like, fair enough, say for instance they just followed the rules just so they didn't get into trouble, they couldn't be bothered with the argument. I've heard that quite a lot, you know, but like now they're still wearing it and there's no argument.
Well, those people, and some of my friends and family were some of them, those people that complied just because they didn't want to get in trouble are the same people that put people on cattle cars in 1930s Germany.
Mm-hmm.
They just didn't say anything. They just didn't do anything. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Martin Niemöller quote, the famous Martin Niemöller quote. He emigrated to America after the war, He lived in Germany and he emigrated and became a pastor. And he was interviewed at a pro-abortion rally. And they were interviewing him saying, shouldn't you be against this? Shouldn't you be telling them that they can't walk around here saying, we want to have abortions? Shouldn't you be against it? And he said, yes, it's murder in God's eyes. I'm completely against abortion, of course. He says, but this is about free speech. They have the right to say that we want an abortion, whether I agree with it or not. And I'm campaigning for their right to say it. And he went on to say, when I was in Germany, when they came for the immigrants, I wasn't an immigrant, so I said nothing. When they came for the trade unionists, I wasn't a trade unionist, so I said nothing. Blah, 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 all the way down to when they came for the Jews, I said nothing because I weren't a Jew. When they came for me, there was nobody left to say anything for me. That's why I'm stood here. And that's what people are missing now. They think that, you know, they don't think it's a problem that a woman can stand outside an abortion clinic with her eyes closed and pray and be arrested for praying in her head. Because I'll guarantee if that was a Muslim with a mat out praying, he wouldn't have been arrested. Mm-hmm. No, you know, so we've got a real problem, because when everything like that is pointed out, people have got to be put into a category of racist or bigots or anything. When it comes down to common sense, you're allowing how many thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, are we now taking as immigrants over the last 10 years illegally? And now we're going to pay them to be illegal, and we'll give them all this stuff. But we're going to take winter allowance off an old girl who's paid all her life, who shouldn't have even been paying bloody bills. There's something that's got to give there. And if you don't look down these rabbit holes, and I understand you can go down a rabbit hole and get stuck, but these rabbit holes all join up. It's not just about gas or electric or council tax or mortgages. It's about a complete cultural shutdown, lifestyle change, and you're going to accept it. If you don't, this is what's going to happen. Well, what's life then after that? It's just what people tell you. Well, if it's what people tell us, then there's no saviour, there's no nothing. We might as well just do what we want. But we know right from wrong. What do we base that on? Atheists will say it's a moral thing. But if it's subjective, well, I've handed toilet rolls to people who liked killing people, who liked raping. You know, one fella changed his name by deed poll to his last name being Raper because he was that happy that he did stuff like that. You've got to understand that if people don't use that brain and think, they just toss to and fro on all these emotions. And we know there's a psyop on everything. It's just when you start saying everything's a psyop, we don't get anywhere. We just go like that. So you take the facts. I know for a fact I shouldn't be paying bills. I should be setting off. It's not that I'm getting out of. It's not that I'm refusing. It's what the system asks of us to balance the books in our company. And we decide to not bother. And the people who we've employed just go, we can't balance these books. And the government go, tell you what, we'll put some more regulations in and we'll up the prices for all the shops and businesses. But all the shops and businesses are me and you sat in our own bloody house as well. So they're creaming everything. And it's the Privy Council that runs all this through the judiciary. So until you get to the Privy Council and see how embedded this is, you don't even then see the peerage, the royalties, the bloodlines, and these bloodlines go all the way back, Pete. All the way back. Prince Charles claims direct descendancy of the serpent, the dragon bloodline through Vlad the Impaler. You've got a bloodline here that is biblical. So there again, I couldn't get away from the biblical aspects of it. And I can't get away from what looks like it's true. And if it's not true, then I expect people to be able to come and show me that. Once you start calling me names with no evidence or information, then I just switch off nowadays. 10 years ago, I might have wanted to headbutt people with every word of the bills of exchange because I was that angry. Because I was vilified for telling people that they shouldn't be paying these bills. You know, my best mate, he came home from work one day, went visiting his mum. And his mum was really cordial with him. He says, "You all right, Mum?" She says, "I saw your video today." Went, "Which one?" Said, "The one where you've written about Brexit on your van and the gas, water and electric and you don't pay." And she said, "I've never been so disappointed." Because you do. And he says, "What do you mean?" He says, "You don't pay bills." I've never been so disgusted. That's his mum. And you think, that's what I know that's what my mum would have said. But she taught me to have this common sense. So it would have had to have been an argument with my mum, because she'd have had to prove me wrong. And when she couldn't, she'd have had to accept it. It's the way I was brought up, Pete. If she told me, if you believe you're right, stand up for yourself until you proved you're wrong, and then accept it. So I did. I can't accept that I'm wrong when I just get called names, when I've been in a courtroom where they said, "That's a remedy. Don't need any more. I just need to know, how are you doing it?" And if I'm registering, if all property is being registered under a business title of Mr., Miss or Mrs., then you own title to that property, a piece of paper. Paul would have owned every brick, every dimension of the property, 6 to 12 foot down. That's one of the things why when people say, "I'll defend my castle," if it's registered correctly, you can defend your castle to the death. But if it's your shop, Pete, you can't. And it's a different set of rules. You know, people say, "There's no wet ink signature on this." You don't need a wet ink signature to go into a shop who, if there's people there allegedly using gas, water and electric, paid for by the taxpayer to make profit. We will cut your water off. You can't do it because it's human rights. You're using it at the shop. The ethical stuff starts to fade away if we pretend that it's all commerce. And that's if we'd have stayed in Brexit, if we'd have stayed in Europe, not Brexit. All those civil laws would be applied to us now. So everything that happened in Germany, where Germans were being held down and injected, basically, with vaccines, that's what the threat was. That didn't come here. They just threatened you, saying, "You're going to lose your job if you don't have this." And now they say, "Well, we didn't force you into it. You had a choice. Yeah, lose my job or have a job." Great choice. They're saying it all in Australia. When you open that up to how expansive it is and how it's all joined, I don't know how you can not see the joins. You know, I've had it levelled at me that I see conspiracies in everything. 2 people conspire against 1 man. That's it. That's conspiracy. If you can't see that there's a conspiracy from Matt Hancock, Boris Johnson at least, then I don't know what you're looking at. You're in a different world to me, because I know it's not the world I grew up in, Pete.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's exactly the whole point, where I think everybody is kind of put off, let's just say. Maybe it's not scared, but they're certainly put off by voicing an opinion if they get called something like a conspiracy theorist. And, you know, that's getting like thrown about all the time now, when literally what you're saying just rings true completely. Well, you only need 2 people, and that's a conspiracy. They've conspired together to actually do something to one other or a group of others or whatever it is. You know, you can see, well, that is a conspiracy then. So the more and more information comes out about what they've been doing since, like, 2020 and all of the nonsense, and they're all even arguing with each other. You can just see it's a pantomime, and nothing's going to happen to anybody. You know, like, oh, Matt Hancock said this and Boris Johnson said that, and they had a party down there. And, you know, it doesn't matter if you get somebody popping out now and saying, yeah, but I'm out of it now, but I've always tried to be the good boy, and I wasn't going to go to the drinks, party with them because I knew I was trying to get stitched up. And, they're still part of it. Whoever was an MP at that time still knew everything that was going on.
Yeah.
And, to me, when you listen to this, oh, no, I wasn't part of it. I didn't know anything about it. I think they're actually trying to pull the wool over your eyes yet again, no matter what.
Parliamentary privilege. They can lie legally. So
yeah.
why nobody who I know believes a politician. So when I say, well, why do you vote? well, if we don't vote, we can't change anything. Well, if I'm voting between someone who'll shoot me in the face or somebody who'll stab me in the face, I might be tempted to go for the one who'll stab me in the face because I'll survive more than likely and a bit longer, but just wounded. Shot in the face, I could still survive, but it might be a bit of a quicker death or something like that. Hang on a minute, let's throw a third one in. Let's throw reform in. Yeah, we don't agree with either of these, and we'll do this, this, and this. And then you go, well, all of you can tell me lies, and then once you've got 4 years, you're legally bound, and we're legally bound to allow you to do what you want for 4 years. How does this system work? It means democracy that everybody brags on about is 51% of people telling the other 49% what to do. Well, if that now impinges on my private property, then I'm up in arms. But what if I've not got that private property? I've nothing to stand on. So communism, the planks of communism, 90% in place in this country. The family's destroyed. There's no private property. We've not had it for a long time. People can go on about trusts and everything. I believe that trusts work. It's how they work. But there should be a simpler remedy. But you cannot find that remedy. If you don't know it, they are not going to tell you. How that Giro came to me, it's just unreal. It was just put straight in front of me and told what it was. And I just went, that makes sense. It can't be right, that. But it makes sense. So, like I said, I went out and I spoke about it. I said, stop calling me names. Come and tell me why this is wrong. This is what it does under the Bills of Exchange, under the Consumer Credit Act. It is accepted for non-commercial agreements. So if I'm not in commerce, you must accept this, especially as you've sent it me. You're playing your part by issuing it. I'm playing my part by endorsing it. Where have you gone? It was too simple, Pete. Too simple. So I didn't want to. When people started to go off on their own things about doing it and stuff, I've no problem with. The more angles that these people are attacked from, we pen them into a corner. But if you've not got that remedy, all we've got to do is you need to sign this. Well, how do we prove it? Get him into a court, get a Bills of Exchange lawyer as an interpreter and say, what is this? Oh, that's a joint Giro credit. Where is that drawn from? It's drawn from third party. So not me or the agent. No, it's drawn from third party, which is HMRC, who's put the tax money in there to cover the creditor's bill. That bill's been generated by a meter. You need that meter to generate that bill so it can be set off, so it can balance the taxpayer's book. If you have a shop, you need that meter to generate an invoice so you can pay as the debtor for using the taxpayer's money and balance the other set of books. If you change your meter and don't register it, you are committing fraud against the taxpayer. If you use the joint Giro and try and set your bill off and they refuse it, the agent is committing fraud against the taxpayer. Where do we go with that, Pete? Got to go to court. And if one man takes that to court and nobody else, that one man will be dealt with. But if many took that to court, with that in mind, with all the rest to come in on top, I just couldn't see how we couldn't do something, we couldn't change it. But now, because people left it, they're in for a fight. They're all in. This is to the death. There's no, I can't see any niceties coming out of this. I'd love it. I really would. I'd love a load of people turn up at a court tomorrow in different parts of the country with the joint Giros, with different companies. You'd lock the court system up. Bailiffs would stop. Everything would stop. But they're being told now that they can do this. I believe under the energy bill that passed, there's legislation in that if you refuse a smart meter, police are being given powers to red key your property for a refusal of a smart meter. But they're not implementing that yet. But it's in the legislation and it's public policy. So there's no point going to an agent like E.ON or Scottish Power or British Gas and arguing with them. They'll just go, public policy, mate. So it's your government. So now you've got to get your government into a courtroom in a corrupt courtroom that they control, this is getting heavy. You know, you've got to, it's not, there's not easy about this now. I think 10 years ago, Pete, they were on the wobble because there was a lot of good stuff in there, mixed with a lot of rubbish, but the good stuff could have changed things. It's just, it was never implemented because people were just apathetic because, you know, oh, I can afford my bills. I don't want to cause that trouble. I don't want to rock that boat. I've got 3 kids and my wife tells me that I don't spend enough time with it. You know, all those factors. I get it. I understand it. But when they came to me and said, we're doing this to you, and I'm reading your own stuff, and I'm saying, well, it says you can't. And then I'm police around me. You just see it. And I'll tell you, it put me on my arse for a few months. You know, the breakdown I had back in 2011, 2012, mate, it was just unreal because you had to question everything I'd ever been taught. Because other than that, I might be accepting somebody's word for it, and they might be a liar, and they might not even know they're a liar. Because my mum was the best liar that you could ever find, because she believed the lies that to be true, what she was taught. And she taught me how to survive in this world. Don't blame my mum for 1 second, but it hurts that somebody trusted so much, taught you that, without even knowing what the truth was. And we do it so often. I mean, I taught my daughters to work hard and pay bills as well. You know, and she's still got to do what she does with household bills and everything. But there should be a better way. And it's, how do we get to that better way? Can we get to that better way? Or do we just have to allow everything to happen? And that's what gets me about all these groups. We've always kept our group quite small because you learn to trust people and their information and how they discern things. Doesn't mean we don't always agree. We do debate a lot of things. Half the time, though, we'll be debating and we find out we're all on the same bloody page, just coming at it from different places. But unless you've got that, what's the alternative? Emmerdale, EastEnders, Coronation Street, football. It's Friday, let's have a drink. I've done all that, Pete. And, you know, it's the stuff in my life that I've done that has been brilliant. I've had great times. But now I understand those times. And it had to change. Everything had to change because we're being danced into a film that we don't want to be part of, but we're already part of it. And it's, how do you explain that to people in simple enough terms that will make them think? Well, if I can't make you think by saying your gas is free because it's taken out of your wages after your taxes have already paid for it, if that one sentence can't make you at least think, if you can justify that paying your bills is, you'll just carry on. And I've never seen it. It wasn't that I took this purposeful break from doing the podcast. It was just, I was doing Raconteurs News, then I was doing my own podcast. And then it just got into COVID. And COVID, you know, I got diagnosed with PTSD because of various things. But it put me into a position where I was 10 years ago. And I've had to battle back through that. And in the top of all that, I've done a few videos because I knew the prices were going to go up and I knew people would contact me, and computer just lit up with people wanting to know this magic button. It's there. Go and get it. Well, how do I get it if they won't give it me? Go and get it. What do you want? What do you want me to say? I'll tell you what. Let me go and get it for you. You know, it's silly. It's silly. You've got to go and do this because the reason we don't know what's going on is because we don't understand, we don't learn. It's not kept from us. It's there to go and learn, but we don't choose to learn it because, like I said, as a 10-year-old, bills of exchange, I'll never use this. How innocent, stupid and naive could you be all in one moment? Because on my way home, I might go into the shop and buy a Mars bar. There I am participating in bills of exchange that I'll never use. It was silly now when I look back. So it's silly to think that the education system has taught you all truth, and it's silly to think that the closest people to you have taught you all truth, because there's a narrative here, and it goes back a long way. You've just got to have a bit of humility, because I'm a Liverpool fan, right? We haven't won anything for ages, and we won the Premiership, and we know the best team in the world. People I've known would go out and argue that. Even when we weren't winning anything, they'd argue the best team. They're obviously not the best team in the world. So you're not humble enough to accept that. Once you're humble enough, I mean, football, if Liverpool lost, it'd ruin my week. You didn't talk to me for at least 2 days, Pete. But now, with all this, you see, bread and circus, and just tribalism, I'm just kept there. But I'd fight to the death for my team. I remember Wayne Rooney scoring a winner at the Cop End at Anfield. Somebody threw a mobile phone at him. Do you think that fella turned up at that game that day with the intention of throwing his mobile phone with all his contacts and everything at Wayne? No. But you can feel that. But you tell people that their house is being robbed off them unfairly, when the banks have no claim. Council tax is an inappropriate tax. You shouldn't pay these bills. You should set them off. If you knew how to do your accounting as a creditor yourself, you should learn this. How does a creditor act in a debt-based economy? Because you're taught that by the age of 13 at Eton. We are taught to act as debtor. It's that simple, mate. And we go, that's life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, the thing is, though, now as well, it's because you mentioned this before as well, that now, I don't know if it's specifically for you, but you'd said that they won't give you, the correct Giro now, the Transcash one.
They don't engage with me, to be fair, Pete, but from what I've heard from other people, they only get the Giros attached to the it's not a bill, it's an invoice. It's a bank Giro. They're asking you to attach payment. So it's a demand, it's a debtor's instrument. Whereas if it's got Transcash on, it's not a debtor's instrument. They can't demand off you other than a signature. That's how simple it is. There's no ambiguity about it. Sign date, give back. If it says Transcash, that's your job done under bills of exchange. If they refuse that, you've then got to put their feet to the fire. And the only way to do that is, the district judge told me that the only way for me to get remedy was to become claimant. So that was to sue a company that made £3.4 billion profit that year. You know, Centrica made £3.4 billion profit this year. Well, if Centrica's made £3.4 billion, what's British Gas made? Why is the CEO of Centrica being asked, can you justify your £40 million bonus in your wage? And he says, no, but I'm still taking it. That's because he's ripped you all off. He's handshakes, secret societies, whatever you want. It's all part of the same club. You know, there's nothing secret about it for me. It's all there for you to go and it's all there for you to go and research, read and look. Some people will get bogged down in certain things. I can't, I'll get bored. The deeper I go, the more filthy, more dirt. I can just see it's going to get dirtier. So I don't need to keep going. I've got enough dirt here. It's like with Freemasonry, we can go into all kinds of stuff. At this start of it, the Bible is about Luciferianism. That's all I need to know what they are. Not Dave, who I go to the pub with, who just goes because he's a window cleaner and some people own apartments and he cleans the windows. And no, it's not that. We're talking about the fundamental residual. That's not the word. But the resonance of this frequency of what comes out of these places. And it's dark, it's evil, it's dirty. And when you read it, you cannot help but go into the scriptures. And that's where you then find what the real truth is about all this. At the end of the day, this is somebody who had daddy issues that started all this. And since then, we've all had daddy issues and mummy issues. And we're tossed to and fro on ignorance and emotions. and we don't have any clarification because we don't have any anchor. We don't know where we are in this world. We're on a sea of commerce. We're not even on land most of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's a lot of what people just like don't get, you know, when we tell them, well, look, you know, the whole world is commercial. You're just working in commerce, you know, and it's all to do with, well, whatever. Yeah, you know, let's just say like the law of the sea, because you're not actually on the land and everything's in commerce. And then and there's a lot of them will actually agree with you. So, yeah, I know that. And then they just leave everything else, and they just, you know, they don't really actually engage with you, you know. They just kind of give you a little bit, oh yeah, I know, and then they go off and do their own thing. And then, like I say, you know, everyone's got to do what they want. You just mentioned like the football, you know, and obviously it is, like, we know the bread and circus thing, but on the other side there's a lot of community side, at least. So you do have like communities that will help each other as well, you know. Obviously, you know, when I was a kid growing up, it was funny because we had a Scottish side and an English side because we lived in England. So I was always going to watch Newcastle United, whereas like when we were in Scotland, I was always going to watch Celtic. Well, I had to, because they were the Catholic side. I had no choice. So yeah, but I mean, on top of that, like I said, there is a community side, and then people there do look after, you know, like each other, and go on a bit more to like help the outside community. So there's at least something there. But apart from that, I think
if they could switch that,
is all split up.
If they could switch that, Pete, to like you said, if Newcastle were playing Sunderland, we can't lose this. Well, what about Newcastle and Sunderland? Your mum, your grandma are paying bills that they shouldn't. What about in that? How do we get to that point? How do we take a beautiful game like football that unites people, even though it puts them in conflict at times, but it unites people? Because, I mean, like I said, football is only a game to me these days, but it's a very beautiful game. And I love it. I love to watch the build-up, but football's changed now. The VAR stuff and everything, again, it's more stuff that's just ruined what a beautiful game was, because it all comes down to this. If people want to fight and kill other people because their football team's lost on penalties or something like that, if you can't get that passionate over you've taught your kids to pay bills, which will then enslave them into this debt-based economy for the rest of their life, and you go, well, I've got a life because Newcastle play on Saturday, then I don't, again, it's what you asked before, Pete. How do you get people to engage? That's a very simple thing for me. I used to go to Anfield in the 80s, where you'd have the obligatory man with the sandwich board on, the end is nigh, with everybody walking past, rolling their eyes at him and laughing. I've never been in a world alive that I've seen this type of stuff that's now playing out. We really are hanging in the hands of demons at the minute, because we're not got our eye on the ball. We're being tossed to and fro. We're being told we've got to hate these people because of that. We've got to dislike them people because of that. You know, all them bloody Muslims and bloody Catholics and bloody Jews and bloody conspiracy theories. It's all everything. So everybody doesn't always act with each other. So it's like you've got the three Spider-Men pointing at each other. It's you. No, I'm the real one. It's madness. And where do we pull that in? It's got to be coming from the individual man and woman. If one man can't discern himself and he's willing to just be tossed to and fro, then he'll find himself other people who are like that. So you get people who say, all you've got to do is just stop paying and don't tell them, and we'll do direct debit indemnity clawback because this is valid and you can take it all back. Brilliant. Yeah, you can. But what comes after? I know somebody who stopped doing all that and took 16 grand back from the CSA. He lost everything. And disappeared from social media. So I know how dangerous this stuff is. individually, it doesn't matter how hard you think you are, they'll make an example out of you. If your argument isn't clear and it doesn't bring us to a resolution, you've lost, because they presume everything in that courtroom. If you don't rebut everything, the judge will just look across at the opposition and say, I know where you're standing. He's not even mentioned it yet. You're all right. You're all right. Because the judge isn't there to help you either. You have to put the judge and get the judge's feet to the fire. We always used that when we went into a courtroom, we always give a judge, we put the judge in a corner, but we always gave him a way out, because most judges will take the way out because they don't want to be hung out to dry. They don't want to lose their pension and everything that comes with it. We've had barristers and solicitors tell us a few times, why didn't you talk to us about this? Do you not think we pay council tax? Do you not think we pay bills? Well, why aren't you doing something about it? Well, you could put us into a position where you say something and we have to give you something in the courtroom. I'm saying, well, you know what to say, so why don't you go and do it? Oh, my pension and my family and this and my holiday home. So they've got people whichever way they want. It comes down to individuals at the end of the day. I had no choice, me, Peter. They were telling me they were going to do stuff to me, and it was either pull my pants down and say, will you pull my pants up when you're finished, or I stand up for myself because I think I'm right. And when I started to think I was right, and then I went to act it, I found out I was right. And then when I found out I was right, I found out how hard they were going to fight to prove me wrong. And that's where we got to. That's where we got to now, Pete.
I mean, that's the thing, like what you're saying about like the whatever you want to call them, the barristers and solicitors, and again, I would 100% say it's like with the MPs as well, because they're all taking the 30 pieces of silver, you know. So there's no way that they're going to actually stick up for you, and there's no way that they're actually going to, or let's put it that way, they've got the remedy, they know what to do. They're either using it quietly, and they're not actually sharing it, right? Which I do believe is probably what is happening a lot of the times, you know. But they're definitely never ever going to help you, because then they're going to be seen by the club as being outside of the club or going against the club. So they're going to then close them down and go for them, aren't they?
They'll find something to say, no, they're wrong because of this. You know, I had, I'll leave them nameless on your podcast, but you'll probably know him. But there was a debt page on Facebook, and I was contacted by, and I was told that he'd been an admirer of my work, whatever that meant, but he'd been an admirer of my work, and he was urging me to take the final step so I could set everything off, because this fellow had been setting his bills off for 30 years. And he said, I want you to take that last step. I went, brilliant. He's contacted me, don't forget. I said, brilliant. What is it? Well, if you pay £2,500 to come on this weekend course. And I just went, I've heard all this before, mate. And it was going, you know, in the end, I got a bit of information that I'd have had to go to Chancery at the Royal Courts of Justice, take it into the private and sign a secret Official Secrets Act. I've got a joint Giro credit. What do I need to do all that for? Bills of exchange says sign and date it. What am I doing? It felt like a distraction. And those people are making money off people's misery by offering them what they say are remedies. You can do an indemnity clawback tomorrow. You know, the banks are now starting to argue, well, why are you doing that? Well, it's got nothing to do with you, bank. You're the middleman who just sends my money to them. And I want them that money back because they've not done something that they should have done. So it's nothing to do with you, bank. They'll come and contact me and say, why have you took your money back? But it's easy to do. Well, if I claw back £1,000 for you, Pete, and I'd say I'm taking 40% of that, well, I've just been paid. Well, what happens when they come back after you? Where am I? Have I gone? Am I here? You know, it's like pie hawkers. They're just vultures waiting for something to fall, look like it's dead, and pick at it and take away what they can. And, you know, I've been through this fundamentally right through the mincer, and I wouldn't want anybody to go through it. because there's many people I've spoken with who haven't got an understanding about it at all. They just know that there's something wrong. You know, they want to believe the gas is free, but they don't know why. And it's people who might take that on and get metaphorically raped of everything because they don't know what to do. And then you've got other people who will have this bit of information, this nugget, and use somebody as a guinea pig for their knowledge without them having a dog in the fight. And I've seen too much of that. That's why if I took a case on and it didn't get the remedy, it didn't win, who are they going to point the finger at? Me. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll walk my walk, I'll do my path, and I'll stand up for everything that I've done, but I won't do it for other people, because there's always going to be a blame if it doesn't go well. And we've had people who've followed people. One lad was going to lose 2 properties because of council tax, because he'd been told to go in and say, well, I don't think it was no contract, but it was something like no contract, prove I'm obligated. You can't open a shop in a town centre and say, I'm not paying business rates, I'm not paying for the gas, water and electric. Doesn't matter how many times you say I have no contract. You run a business and make profit in our town, that's what you do. Simple. Simple, there's no point arguing. But we've got a lot of people who argue points that are undefensible. You know, you can't say, you can't even stand in a courtroom and say, you can't apply council tax to my property. Why? Because it's not a business. There's nothing business related. I have no stock. I have no VAT payments. I have no employees. There's nothing business-like whatsoever. But it could be. And you've registered it as a commercial property, so potentially it could be. So at this moment, council tax applies. Now you have to go and rebut that council tax applies. And then you've got to find a judge to go against another judge on an arbitrary decision. And he can make another arbitrary decision. That's just like speaking to your mate and saying, what do you think I should do about this? There's nothing that you can do. So you just got to realise that it's not just you, it's everybody. But when you get everybody arguing about different things and wanting to pull in different directions, as you know, Pete, it stretches it too thin, and once it snaps, it's gone. The thing with me is remedy. Don't want to argue. I've got a remedy. What are you doing about this? Where have you gone? Was that it?
Yeah, I'm 100% like with you there. And you know, I know people as well, and I've been trying to help people and stop people from losing their properties because they say, oh, but I'm standing on this argument of they've never told me my obligation to council tax or whatever it would be, you know. And so, but you know, and they say, well, it's a fake court, and it's not real court, and it's not my real name. I say, yeah, but right, the fake court can still really take your real house, and you're going to be homeless. Doesn't matter if it's like not your real name, if it's a fake name, if it's your legal fiction, your straw man, whatever you want to call it, right? If they're going to go and take that property, which is what they specialize in doing, then they're going to take that property. And that's what they want to do, right? The council love taking people's properties. It's massively profitable for them. Why wouldn't they want to do that? So they're over the moon when you don't pay your council tax. Whoa, hey, we've got another house there, right? So let's go and get the boys together. Who is it that actually put in one of the biggest profits ever, like last tax year, right? The record profits, the most they've ever made in their whole history, right? Bristow and Suter, a debt collector. How the hell?
Well, you know, I was just going to say Marston's, but yeah, Bristow and Suter.
Yeah, well, you know, but that was the only one that was like shouting and screaming about it. But I bet you Marston's did as well. That type of, and then I'd see my mind's ticking away and thinking, all right, so why have you got these groups that are going on all of these social media platforms again? Don't pay your council tax, don't do this, don't do that. I think, what shares have you got where then? Because the only ones that I can see that are making money are the councils and the debt collectors. And the councils, when you don't pay, they just make more money. I mean, it's to me,
it's at least a potential. It's at least a potential, because when a charge is put on somebody's property, they tend to capitulate. they don't tend to put charges for council tax because the liability orders aren't actually valid because it's got to be a business thing. So they're trying to merge them two. But for utilities, they put charges on properties. I know people who had charges put on the property and they've left them alone. But if they put their house up for sale, all of a sudden this company is going to be notified and they'll go, he owes us this. So we are being, whilst all that's going on with the council, all those taxes that are paid, they apply to the Treasury for a certain amount of money. So they're sat on taxes, millions of pounds of tax money. But then we pay extra for fire service and ambulance service and the police through council tax. Well, that's a commercial tax. If you have an episode in, an Asda, you need an ambulance. Well, that's happened in Asda's store, so we'll charge Asda for that. If it happens in the public street, you've already paid for it, so you don't pay. Asda's paying for you there, you've already paid. It's a two-pronged thing, but it's supposed to be for all of our benefits. That's why the way I looked at it, Pete, was if everybody set off all their bills, potentially we would have flattened the national debt. So now there's no national debt. We have a massive scope for a better infrastructure, which invites more businesses, which means more revenue, which invites more employment, which means more revenue. I'm struggling to see a downside to working properly in a debt-based economy. That's why signing out and getting rid of my birth certificate and all that, it weren't interested to me because I can make gas, water, and electric go away by setting them off. Well, that's 200 quid a month back then. Thought this has got to be right. And then council tax, well, I shouldn't be paying this. Surely if I go to a court and explain that I don't live in a shop, that'll be it. That's where you start to see the game being played. But if you don't know the fundamental basics and the facts, arguing about you paying terrorism, they're stood here and you're arguing about terrorism over here. The judge is just going to go take the house. Take it. Simple, mate.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, obviously, I can see what you're saying as well. Whereas, then if that was the case of setting off, which is what we do a lot, maybe a different way, but still setting off. And I always say, well, you got to balance the books. There is no money. There's this money thing is a myth, but you have got like a currency that you can just set off and balance it and balance the books. And the people that I've actually done a lot of study with, I know that they've actually balanced off hundreds of thousands in HMRC and IRS. Well, let's call them bills.
HMRC always send a joint Giro out.
Right.
I've seen it so many times, especially self-employed tax. If you're self-employed and you're paying tax, you watch what they send you a joint Giro. It's just nobody ever takes HMRC on because if you take HMRC on, they'll come after you, especially if you've got equity, Pete. If you've got equity in property, they'll make an example, especially when you challenge them over income tax. This is where the battle is. You're battling against your own government and you have to know what you're battling about. If you stand there as an adversary over something that doesn't make legal sense, they can legally instruct their police enforcement to do whatever. And that's why you can't take this to the police, because you go to the police and they're told what they can and can't do. Don't get me wrong, I know a lot of coppers are good friends of mine, and they're all being challenged under the principles. One fella's just left to drive trains because on the second warrant application, the bailiff was asking them to assist. And he said, no, we're only here to prevent breach of the peace. And I told him when he left my job to do this, I went, your principles will be challenged, I'm telling you. And he left. He left because he couldn't evict a single mum with 3 kids or an elderly woman who's paid for her house for 25 years and now she's struggling, whereas she could claim on the insurance or the mortgage is gone and it should be hers anyway. That talks about racketeering. That talks about fraud, theft, and racketeering. And that's what you see the court system involved in. You can't get away from it. The gas companies who force pay-as-you-go meters on people are racketeering for more profits. That's all it is. You know, I come in your shop, Pete, and say, hey, you got robbed last week. I'll make sure it doesn't happen again, mate. Just make sure you pay me 100 quid a week. No, I'm not paying 100 quid. Well, I believe you got robbed again yesterday, Pete. Do you want to reconsider? You know, it's so simple. They're not clever people, Pete. They're not clever. They've just had a massive advantage on the mass majority of people. And the mass majority of people are stuck in like a Stockholm syndrome type thing where they'll fight for their abuser. They believe that the government wouldn't do stuff like that to them. My own family and friends, I can't believe my own government would do that to us. They've always done it.
Yeah. It's like, I stopped like talking to people completely all through 2020 onwards, because, and that's what I would get. Look, well, come on, the government wouldn't do anything to harm you. What do you mean they want to kill you? Don't be stupid. This thing, I have to stop talking completely. It's just, but the government wouldn't do that. I think the government, they're the biggest murdering scumbags that you could ever meet, you'd ever come across, and that's why I just I don't care if it's an MP or an ex-MP or something. They know everything that's going on, and they're all part of it. And they can say that they're the better side of the MPs or anything like that. You know what I mean? They're all the same, 100%. And they all go off to like London and rake it all in. And they're all making. How comes there's one guy that I know who was thick as two short planks. Right, got into actually being MP, and then he's a millionaire, And I mean, the guy, he wouldn't know how to organize it, the proverbially in a brewery, But it is what it is, well, and that's why I don't trust any of them. I know for a fact that they're all at it.
The biggest killer is democide, which is genocide by government, by your own government. Democide is the biggest killer, and anybody who gets anywhere near the cabinet or anywhere near number 10, you are already sucking Satan's cock. You are not out to help people or do anything to change anything. You've already been told what you're doing. Here's your narrative. You're going to pretend you're had an affair outside and under this CCTV. We'll then put you on Big Brother, and everybody will forget that you've killed all our nans and granddads, and people will accept you. I remember being sat in my family's house. They were watching the end of I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. And they saw my face when I walked in. They said, look, it's only 20 minutes left and then we'll turn it off. And this little lad, 9-year-old lad, is watching it, and he looks up at the TV screen and he says, I like Matt, meaning Matt Hancock. I almost had whiplash as I snapped my head round to look at this kid, and his mum's looking over at me and angrily mouthing at me going, he's only 9, leave him alone. And I'm going, that's it. And I thought, this is what the problem is. He's done all that. He's passed that legislation. These people have been taken out of hospitals, put into care homes to die, and you've had to watch that through a patio door. But look how good he's doing now because he's had a few bugs, and look how sorry he is. Oh, my word, I'm going. Just, it was just the realisation. It was more and more realisation that how much we've been drowned. It's like Noah's flood without the water. People are just drowning under this.
Yeah. Oh, I know. It's upset. Yeah. It's just, but the thing is as well, I think, and I think you will actually know exactly what I'm talking about, is that you've got to make sure that you get yourself out of that kind of like mindset and bubble of like hating them all so much, because you're just going to cripple yourself. It's like you get to know more and more deep truths. It does get, you said it before, so dirty that you can't go any further down, or don't need to go any further down, but you can't live there either, right? Because it's just going to do you.
It's like it would be like eating poison and waiting for them to die from it. That's what it's like. It eats away at you. Believe me, Pete, I had to forgive people and what happened to me. I had everything stolen. Everything that my inheritance, everything was taken from me. And when you've lost, you know, this doesn't sound much, a semi-detached house that's inherited, you know, through hard work by your parents, you think that's pretty bad. But then I was put in touch with a woman called Michelle. Now, Michelle was married to a billionaire. She was a billionaire. And her husband had been given some money by her father and herself, and he took it to London and turned this money into like 800 billion. So this investment that they give him, because he was a whiz kid, he turned it into 800 billion. She found out he was having an affair, so she filed for divorce. 2 days later, she's contacted by solicitors saying that he's missing. He's in, what's the clinics that the famous and the celebrities go to dry out and stuff?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I can't remember the
I can't think of the name off the top of my head. But Priories, he's in the Priory. Yeah. He's in the Priory. So anyway, she ran around all these priories, couldn't find him. A week later, he turns up dead, and the Metropolitan Police class it as suicide. He's jumped from the second floor, but he's landed over to the right from the window they said he's jumped from. He's landed in a strange position on top of railings. So he's impinged on top of railings. He's dead. He's jumped. He's killed himself, and he's bankrupt. That's what she's being told. So she gets a private investigator, and this investigator finds out all the accounts are offshore, all live. Her as a widow is now due 800 billion pounds, right? She couldn't find a barrister to represent her in the City of London because the banks told them not to take it on. Now, this is a woman who couldn't get a day in court with 800 billion. And an ex-taxi driver, an ex-window cleaner, she's asking me about mortgages because that's where she'd started to find out all this. What a lovely woman. You know, it doesn't matter about money. This woman was a genuine, lovely woman who had her eyes opened into this world. And my world and her world were just smashed together like that. So it doesn't matter about class, colour, creed, religion. It doesn't matter. We're all being bummed. When we decide to stop that, then we can clarify what our other differences are. But there's no point fighting with each other over differences that are being forced on us. And it's just easier to argue with, you know, it's easier for me to argue with Ahmed or Ishmael or something like that than it is to say, hang on a minute, what are you doing here? You shouldn't be doing this to me, Ahmed and Ishmael. You shouldn't be acting like this towards us. And we're all in the same thing. We're all paying bills. You know, I've got Muslim friends, I've got Catholic friends, I've got all friends from different walks. We're all doing the same thing. If we could get that together, the rest will sort itself out. I didn't know the truth of this world until I knew the lies. Once I knew that the lies were true, I had to find the opposite. There's only one way for that. But it takes so much, Pete. It's not as easy, I found, as to just explain it to somebody in simple terms, because I don't know how simpler that you can explain a gas bill with a check, sign date, give it back, gone. Why? Well, it's because they've already took your money, they've spent it on the grid, they now need to balance the books to show you what we spent it on. You know, you've paid your share, this is your share, we've spent it. Balancing books, double entry bookkeeping, it's fraud.
100%. I mean, that's the thing is, I'm gonna have to like get everybody that I know now, like with HMRC bills, to actually have a look at the joint gyro, make sure it's a joint gyro. Mind you, I'm not telling anybody what to do with it. If they want to do it, they can do it. If not, then, you know.
Exactly that, mate. All I can say is I could send you the documents for the bank gyro and the joint gyro documents that I've got that explain what they do. I can send you them. But if it doesn't have trans cash on the gyro, it's not a joint gyro. It's a paying-in slip. Trans cash for me, trans cash in transit. It's credited. It just needs those funds releasing. Your agent can't get access to your account till you authorise it. Now they can get access to the funds. They set off your bill. HMRC know that that's been set off. They lower national debt. That was my understanding of it, and I thought it's very simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Brilliant. Well, I'll tell you what, I think we'll best leave it there, because we've got everyone's going to be when I watch like some videos and
I know.
Oh, I'm not going to watch that.
I'm not listening to that 2 hours. I know I do it with my own stuff, mate. Our last 2 podcasts were only meant to be an hour, and we went over to 2.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, obviously, because although it is simple, you're right. Exactly what you're saying, and you've got it there. But I mean, it is also so deep, though. You know, it's not just the thing. Well, yeah, all right, pay it off by that one. Just don't worry about it.
Well, it's simple. It's simple to understand. To execute it, you're going to have to get your hands dirty, because they don't want you to have this. They can't have you have it, because it means 100 years to unravel, and you've been bummed. And you know, I had 3 uncles fighting at Dunkirk, mate. What's happened since then? What did they fight for? You know, they came home, fortunately, all my uncles, but what did they leave over there? That should be a question now, because those uncles came back and they worked hard and they paid bills, mate. You know, I've had prisoners who were blown up by improvised explosive devices in Afghanistan. They go to hospital for 3 months, then they're discharged. The army don't want to know them. They put on benefits. They've got all this crap going on and they ended up in jail. It's such a... And they make money off him. Because if you put a man behind bars, I would say it's probably more now, but let's say, for argument's sake, for an ordinary location prisoner, it's 100 grand a year to feed him and do everything per man. And then when you get into the sex offenders realm, you're talking 200, maybe plus, because you've got all these types of programs that can be implemented. So jails apply for all this taxpayer money, and obviously, if the jails are rehabilitating prisoners, that means our customers won't come back. So we can't rehabilitate them. So we pay prisoners to make fridge magnets, and then when we run out that contract, we pay prisoners to sit in a workshop and play cards because it's time out of cell. But they're still not getting rehabilitated. And that's, you know, it's the same with the NHS. Patient cured is a customer lost. It's the same. If we cure our customers in the jails, then the police have no customers because we've rehabilitated everybody. So it's not aimed at profit. And if it's not aimed at profit, these bastards don't want to know. That's what's got to change. We've got to get down to the fundamentals, Pete, and people attacking out the fundamentals with the facts and not this other stuff. I'm a man. That's my birth certificate. It doesn't matter about that now. Get something that you can grab them with. You can't give me a check and then say you're not accepting it. That was how simple it was for me. You've given me this. What do you mean you won't accept it? I've done what I need to do. Here you go. Yeah, we've got that, but you've not paid. That's it. And that was where the argument was. You have to prove it. And if you're a defendant, they don't have to hear. When I asked for summary judgment, the judge said no, because nobody turned up. And I said, but if I hadn't turned up and they had, you'd have given it to them. He says, yes, I would. I said, so where do I get my remedy? He says, you've got to become claimant. So that means sue these companies to do it. If you're not willing to do that and you want to get this and do this process, don't bother, because 10 years ago, we might have been able to change something without having to have to do it like this, because they were panicking that much. All we needed was people to do it. But now you're going to have to get your hands dirty and you're going to have to know what you're talking about, because if you stand in the court and lose it on something silly, like I have no contract, for example, that means everybody is going to be treated as you've no contract. So you have to rebut that and fix that before you can even get into your case. That's what's happened with the court system now. That's why they love these useful idiots who take people down paths and get them into trouble, because by the time that person got into trouble and they've lost the house or a couple of houses, then the next person coming along who understands it says, oh, I won't do that. And that's basically where we've got to, Pete. We're in a stage now where if you don't know what's going on, you just don't know. But if you know what's going on and you choose to do nothing, then you've already accepted what's coming. If you do choose to do something, then you need to do something that is real, truth, fact, not something made up, not something that you think might be all right. I know that the remedy is the Giro for the bills. I know to the creditor they must provide it. The trouble is we have all acted as debtors, so do they have to provide it to us? That's up for debate. Do you have to go to court and prove you're not a debtor? How do you do that? And isn't this property registered in Mr. Webster's name? That's a shock. They don't even have to say that to you. They just have to pretend that. So it's complete overhaul of everything. Taking property and putting it in the right jurisdiction. How do we do that? You hit the nail on the head earlier, Pete, that if people are doing stuff like this, they're not telling. So we've got to go back to the drawing board, I'm afraid, with Wile E. Coyote.
Yeah, definitely. You know, but anyway, what I'll do is, because we could be here like 6 hours later, we'll still be talking, still be going.
Yeah, I could talk to you for hours, mate.
Yeah, because it is obviously like a massive subject. It isn't just a one-hit wonder. But anyway, so we will leave it there, people. Hopefully that you've enjoyed it. You know, we've got a lot of information to get out. Probably come back and do another one. All right, so hopefully. But have you got any podcast or website or anything that you're still using now or doing now, or?
You can get hold of me through Facebook, the Webster Report Facebook, and the Webster Report YouTube. Right. Those are two. I've only ever bothered using those two channels, to be fair, because Facebook, to be honest, Pete, I wouldn't even bother using Facebook other than the amount of information I get from so many sources. Because I don't get notifications. I don't even know if anybody who sees my stuff anymore, but I get a lot of information that comes through. So even if it's only one way, I'm still utilising that, and then I can debate it now on the YouTube stuff. It's just, you know, this drags, or even the best of people, this stuff and information will drag you to the floor, because you have to realise that the world that you grew up in is not the world that you're in. And you've got to then find out what the truth is, because I know, including myself, many people's anchor is based, and the foundation of the life are built on working hard, paying bills, banks lending money. If those aren't true, we've got a massive problem for people. And people have got to learn what the truth is before we can even engage in that.
100%, yeah. And that's the thing, is like, and then a lot of that is just too big for people to actually get in their head, so they just switch it off, you know.
But that's all part of the plan as well. That's part of the plan as well. That's over my head. No, it's not. It can't be over your head. You've got a college degree, mate. You've got a university degree. I've got 7 GCSEs. It can't be over your head if it's over my head, if it's not over my head. But what I found was the worst people I could actually engage with were university graduates. It was like everything else is cut off. If it's not in my book, and this is family again, my godson, if it's not in my university book, it's not true.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just the longer that you actually spend it's not an education, it's an indoctrination camp. So the longer that you spend in college, school, university, whatever it would be, then, you know, that's the longer you're getting indoctrinated, and the stronger the sort of like programming is going to be. So you got no chance, really, have you? Teachers have got to be the worst.
Yeah, you know? Spot on, mate. Spot on.
Anyway, so we'll leave it here for now. And,
nice chatting to you.
We'll definitely have another chat another time, but hopefully people enjoy it. If you want to talk with Paul or connect with Paul, go into the Webster Report on Facebook or YouTube. Look that up for me. All right. And take care, everyone. And we'll see you all later.
God bless, guys. Cheers.